I'm Becky Saif. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to take a look at drum and bass arrangement. It was a topic that was suggested in the Discord, and so I've decided to make a video on it. Yeah! Woohoo! If you do want to suggest ideas for future videos, please jump in the Discord. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love you to be part of our Discord community. The link to that is below, and check out the YouTube suggestions channel in there. Suggest your ideas and you could have a video made by me on this channel. Also check out the Twitch channel below as well, and all of the other links to all of the other stuff that you might want to know about. Drum and bass arrangement. Have you ever looked at a project, a blank project, and just gone, okay, so shall I just start at bar 1? How long do I need to start for? Where does the build-up come? Where do I put the drums? The thing with looking at an arrangement view is it's very linear. It starts at bar 1 and it goes on for an infinite amount of time, and it can be quite daunting. Now, the biggest piece of advice that I can give you is to use an already existing track. This is the way I do it, and yeah, you might think it's cheating, but it's not. You're just taking the arrangement from the track, and it's going to help you speed up your workflow immensely so that you can get the music made and released. So let's grab an already existing track. We're going to drag that into the project. Now, just looking at this track, you can see that there are definitive changes that happen over the course of the timeline. And we can actually mark these changes out. So the first part here, I can see that it builds here, and then there's a gap, and then it's a big block of stuff. So I'm going to insert a locator here. So right click on the top timeline, add locator, and this is your drop. Your drop is where most of the information, most of the music exists, the drums, the bass, the melody, all of the meaty content that everybody goes crazy for on the dance floor, that exists at the drop. And you can tell that this is the drop because it's meaty, it's fat. Now, the stuff before this is your intro. So we can now go to bar 1, right click, add locator, and we can call this the intro. The intro in this particular song goes from bar 1 to bar 49. Then we have another change here at bar 113, right click, add locator, and this is called the breakdown. So you can see that it's a breakdown because a lot of the information disappears, the waveform gets smaller, which means that the amount of content in there is less. Then you have this here, which looks like a build up. So right click, add locator, and this is a build up. I'm not playing the track on purpose because I don't want to get a copyright strike, but we can see visually the changes anyway, so I don't need to play this for you. This build up here actually looks very similar to this build up here. So we could go to bar 33, right click, and we could do build up. Now we have a drop here, add locator, and this is going to be second drop. The next part we can do is the end. And the end, I would say, is here because this starts to fade out. So I'm going to do bar 209, add locator, end. Now that we've got the track sectioned up, we can further dissect it by going in between these locator lines. So you can see here between the drop and the breakdown, if we go across halfway, that's bar 81, we can just do second section. Second section from the drop. And then this one, second drop, so we can go in the middle of here, bar 177, right click, second section. Now you can see that we have an intro, this section here, then we have a build up, then we have a drop, then we have the second section, we have the breakdown, we have another build up, we have a second drop, and a second section, and the end. So using Ableton Live, that's how you can add locators using a reference track, something that already exists, and you can mark out the definitive points at which the track changes. And then you can just go into your project, you can click on the track, and you can backspace, and now you have an arrangement template that you can use to work with. Now, if you take a look at the bottom, you have the timeline in seconds. So we've got the bar lines at the top and we have the timeline in seconds at the bottom. Generally in electronic music, you would have the drop coming at around 1 minute. That gives the DJ 1 minute of time to mix in the tune. Now, depending on the style of drum and bass, for example, radio edits and commercial pop songs, they might not have 1 minute of intro because they're probably designed to just be listened to on the radio. So you might see some of the commercial drum and bass producers only doing about 30 seconds on the intro and the track only lasting for about 3.5 minutes. So if you want to do some commercial drum and bass, grab a commercial radio edit track and stick that in your project, and then start to do the same as what we've just done with the locators, but with the radio edit. And on the other side as well, you might see a lot of the older styles of drum and bass, a lot of the older tracks, they might have an intro that lasts all the way up to 1.5 minutes. But generally, bar 49, 1 minute in is enough time in the modern era to mix in a drum and bass tune. And the same with the outro. Even though we have the end here, the outro is generally around 1 minute. So from here, from the second section, this is where the outro starts. This is where a lot of the instruments start to disappear and it starts to thin out in the mix. Fast forward to actually having some tracks in the project, and you can see that we still have all the locators, and I have put some tracks. We've got kick, snare, tops, break, bass, horns, and melodics in this tune. So this is generally the instrumentation that you would have in electronic music, really, not even just drum and bass, electronic music as a whole. I've constructed this in the full body, the main meat section of the track, from the drop to the second section. And this is actually how I would recommend you do your music. Rather than doing it in a linear fashion from 0 to 1 minute, from the intro all the way up to the drop, instead build your drop, your main meat section of the track, and then take parts out of that and build it backwards and forwards. Because this section here is where it's a little bit more empty. All you really need in here are some melodics, some thinner elements, just higher frequency material, and place it sparsely around in the arrangement. Whereas in this section, in the drop, this is where you have your meat, your kick, your drums, your snares, your tops. Everything is in that section. We have the main meat of the track, we can start to take parts of this and pull it backwards into the intro. You don't want the low frequency, high energy content in the intro, because this is where the DJ is going to be mixing out of the previous tune, which might have that in there. And also you want to add a little bit of tension in the intro. And to build that, you need to have it a bit thinner than you would in the drop. So bass frequency, low frequency content, maybe sprinkle it here and there, but not full like what it is in the drop. Let's start with the melodics. So we're going to bring the melodics back. Let's just copy this back. Now we have the horns as well, so we could bring the horns back, say to bar 17. What you want to do is you want to introduce each instrument one by one. So you're giving the listener a little bit more interest as the timeline progresses. So that's a very rough intro, but you get the idea. You start to bring the higher frequency material back. We could also bring some of the break back and the tops percussion. So we have tops percussion here. We could take this and bring this back to bar 17. You might just want to introduce this a little bit so that the DJ has something to mix in with, because the DJ mixes with rhythm, and so percussion is rhythm. And we could also bring back some of the bass to let the listener know that this is a bass music track. We're teasing the bass, it's about to come in, and we can have the bass moving from bar 33 to bar 49. And you want to make sure that you're creating tension and release throughout your track. And one of the main areas where you would have tension and release is in the build up to the drop. So tension and then release. So that's when people go crazy. With the build up, you want to make sure that you're really pulling out all of the instruments just before the drop, so that impact of the drop is as impactful as you can make it. At the moment, we have a bass here and we have full horn section going on, and really you don't want that to last all the way up to the drop line at bar 49. So what you can do is you can get something like an auto filter, and you could filter that out either down or up. I'm going to go with a high pass filter, and we're going to automate the bass so that it thins out as it gets closer to this drop line. You can see here how we have the automation line going up, the high pass filter is going up, it's thinning out the bass, it gives us some room to create that tension, that something's about to happen, we're about to drop into the main body of the track, and you do that by doing things like an auto filter on your low frequency material. And then that leaves you space for things like a riser. Let's see what the riser sounds like. Let's go on to the second section of the main body of the track, and you'll see that this is, like the first section, another 16 bars to play with. You just need to switch it up a little bit and make it a little bit more different so that you're maintaining the interest from the listener. So what we could do is we could select this and we could duplicate that over, and now you just want to make the two sections different. Generally what I like to do is remove a tops loop from the first one so that when it goes into the second one, you've got just a little bit more tops percussion going on in the background. The listener's not going to massively notice, but it will sound different. And you may have also heard there that the horns and the melodics disappeared from the picture, and that actually further adds to that switch up from section 1 to section 2. You want to make sure that each instrument isn't playing for a extensive period of time, because the listener's going to get bored of hearing that same instrument over and over again. If we had these horns playing throughout all of the track, the listener's just going to get really, really bored. So that actually further adds to that switch up of section, and it also keeps the listener interested in the music. We could further reintroduce these back into the track at a later stage. So what we could do is we could grab them and we could just copy them over, and let's put them in... We'll put them in the breakdown. Maybe not the horns. We'll bring the horns to the second drop so that we have a bit of a different arrangement now from the intro and the build up and the drop in the beginning of the track. We can copy the drums and the bass of the first drop over into the second drop, because we know that this is going to be a main body of the track. It's going to be that same meatiness. And maybe if we switch it up by having this tops loop now in the second drop, that changes it from the first drop and adds a little bit more of a variation, so that you're not having the same picture at any one time in your music. Now we could go into the breakdown. We could even introduce another instrument. I don't have one here, but you could also introduce another instrument in the breakdown. This is where the listener is now going to have a little bit of a breather. They need to chill for a second, because you're going to create that tension again in the breakdown with the build up and back into the drop. Copy the riser over, as it is a brilliant tool for that last little bit of tension just before the drop. And then you can start to copy things from your intro over into the build-up. You can see here the build-up is now different to the build-up in this section, but we could even use the same feature with the auto filter, but this time on our percussion and our break. If we just group them together, we could add an auto filter on here, get it on a high pass, and then we could just do the same as what we did before by creating a high pass slope that builds up towards the second drop so that it thins everything out. Let's play that. And you can see the auto filter, and you hear it, it's getting thinner. looking for tension and release in the track. Another thing that you may have noticed in the horn section, if we zoom in here, you'll see that one horn plays and then another horn plays and then it goes back to the other horn. Call and response techniques are actually really common in drum and bass. You can do it with vocals, with bass lines, with horns, with strings, anything that you feel like you can do a call and response with that has a little bit of a different timbre from one of the same instrument to the other. Or you might not even do that. You might take a vocalist singing a melodic line and you then might have a response of a horn playing the same melodic line, and those voices are calling and responding to each other. And then finally, what I want to show you is creating tension within the actual main body sections of your track. So here we have this second drop section. It is 16 bars of content, but if the listener is listening to 16 bars continuously, they could get bored. It is quite a repetitive thing listening to electronic music, and you want to maintain interest. So let's go, like what we did when we dissected everything, into the middle of this. So from bar 161 to 193, the middle is 177. So let's just call it middle so that we know where the middle is. And now what we can do is we can create some tension, momentary tension, just before it drops into that second part of the body. So by doing that, we take out the thicker tracks, the bass, for example. So we can just select on an area and delete. We could also select on the breaks and delete. And we could even delete some of the kick drum and also the snare drum, because the kick and the snare generally would work in partnership with each other. So let's play what we have here. Now we should just have some tops and one brass note. And once you create gaps like that, the same as when you created a gap with the build-up and you inserted a riser, now we've created a gap, we can start to insert effects to fill the space. So for example, with this brass note, it sounds a bit lonely by itself. So I'm just going to cut that out and I'm going to drag down this brass note. So now it's on a different track. And then I'm going to process this with some effects. One that I really like to use is Replica XT. And that is how I would go about arranging drum and bass. First and foremost is get a already existing track so that you can just quickly get those locators down and then you have your sections to work with. You want to make sure you have tension and then a breather and then release and hit with main content of the track, full instrumentation. And I would definitely recommend that you build that first and then start to build outwards from that, making your intro, making your breakdown and making your second section, because you know you already have all of the parts there. I'm Becky Saif. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please give it a like. It helps to boost the YouTube algorithm, as does commenting. That also helps immensely. Check the links below for more content from me, the Discord, the Twitch channel, the courses, all of the free stuff that you might want to get your hands on. And I will see you for another video. Bye!